I checked my reflection in the polished glass door one last time before stepping into the hushed cavern of the bookstore's event hall. The banner above the signing table gleamed in the fluorescent lights. An evening with Cameron Reyes. My heart hammered as I smoothed the lapel of my blazer. Tonight was the culmination of a decade's work. My debut novel echoes in the corridor, launching in 15 minutes. And yet, the knot in my stomach felt as fierce as on the first day I dared to call myself a writer. Behind me, the line snaked almost to the back wall, 200 people clutching paperback copies. I spotted familiar faces from my online book club, a few classmates from college, and even a rival writer who'd once sneered at my amateurish prose. But closer to the door, a small cluster of voices drifted up, snippets of conversation punctuated by laughter that felt too loud, too pointed. Look, there she is. She can't even look you in the eye. Shouldn't she, what do you call it? Go find a real job. I froze. The words cut sharper than the midday sun through the glass front. My cheeks flamed as I recognized them. The old crew from my summer internship at Mercer and Finch Publishing, the colleagues who'd tutored me through style guides and then quietly written me off when I'd left to pursue fiction full-time. There they were, leaning against a wall by the fiction section, copying a selfie they'd just taken, grins stretched wide, phones thrust at arm's length, as if my presence was part of some private joke. A bubble of nausea rose in my throat. I reminded myself, breathe. Inhaling slowly, I slid my phone from my pocket and tapped a note to Emma, my assistant, who was manning the merch table. Running late. Let them in first, then give me 2 minutes to settle. Emma shot me a thumbs up. I forced a tight-lipped smile and stepped behind the signing table, which gleamed under the spotlights like an altar. The first guest approached. I greeted her by name, scribbled my signature on her copy, and offered a brief word of thanks. Her eyes shone. She said she'd been waiting 6 months to meet me. I felt the knot loosen, replaced by something warm and steady. One by one, I signed. Paperback after paperback. My handwriting blurred. To Sarah, thank you for your support. Cameron. To James, enjoy the journey. The voices behind me faded into background noise, until I heard it again. I guess if she really wanted to be taken seriously, she'd do something useful. I looked up. There they were, 30 yards away, 4 of them, the ringleader, Gavin, leaning forward as if to whisper into my ear. But his voice carried perfectly. They told me to find a real job. They sneered as though the word itself had the power to erase every late-night editing session, every paper rejection, every tear and triumph that had led me here. A real job meant, in their world, spreadsheets and weekly paychecks and predictable raises, not manuscript margins and launch parties. I closed my eyes for a moment, pressing my palms against the cool wood surface. The table quivered slightly beneath my fingers, as if it felt the tremor in my soul. When I opened my eyes, the next fan was already stepping up. A teenager with a quizzical grin held out her book. Miss Reyes, your book, my English teacher assigned it, and I devoured it. I just thank you. I caught the girl's eye, and in that instant, I felt the truth settle in my chest like a rock of gold. I was doing something real, something that mattered. I smiled and bent down to her level. That means the world to me. Keep reading, keep writing. Her smile stretched so wide it lit her whole face. I handed the book back, and for that moment, just that sliver of time, the Mercer and Finch gang ceased to exist. Their laughter, their jabs, they were just ghosts in a distant hallway. But the sting lingered. After signing another dozen copies, I noticed that Gavin and his crew had edged closer. The bookstore manager, perhaps sensing trouble, hovered nearby. Emma locked eyes with me. Do you need me? Her glance asked. I shook my head. No, I could handle this. A man in a crisp suit approached the table. He cleared his throat. He had that polite but firm look that said he was about to ask for something important. My pen hovered over the book's title page. Miss Reyes? He said. Thank you for your time. I wanted to tell you, I'm from New York Media Group. I've covered authors for 15 years. If you ever consider a career in journalism, your insight into character, your command of narrative, I think you'd excel. Fiction's a gamble. A real job reporting pays steady. I blinked. The offer shimmered with possibility, the security of a recommendation from an industry veteran, a guarantee of bylines, of deadlines met and paychecks arriving. One call, one application, and I could trade this trembling podium for a desk behind a cubicle wall. My heart fluttered at the thought. For a split second, I considered closing the book on this dream. escape the sneers, the uncertainty, fold up my author's identity, and slide into something respectable. But then I heard a small voice behind me, a child's voice. Mom says to remind you we have rehearsal tonight. A little boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, peering over her paperback. Sorry, said the mother, flushed with apology. She's just excited. I penned the dedication, for Maya, may your imagination always take flight. I handed back the book. And when Maya smiled, wide-eyed and bursting with wonder, I knew the gamble was worth it. I looked at the New York media rep. Thank you, I said. I appreciate the offer, but I'm where I belong. His brow flickered, then he nodded. Very well, best of luck. He stepped away. I watched him file out toward the fiction stacks, his lamplit face gone from my stage. The next moment, Gavin's voice cut through the applause of the toddler's mother. See? Not even a journalist wants you. My chest convulsed. The world narrowed to their four smug faces, and I realized this wasn't just about them. It was about every voice that had told me I'd never make it. Every rejection letter, every dismissive glance. They all converged in this moment. I stood and stepped around the table, drawing their attention. The murmurs in the line grew hushed. Emma tensed at my side, ready to intervene. But I raised a hand to still her. I smiled, calm, precise. Hi, everyone, I said, voice steady. I'm Cameron. You might know me as the author of Echoes in the Corridor. I nodded toward Gavin. These are some former colleagues who suggested I find a real job instead of writing. A hush fell, heads turned, cameras clicked. I felt the spotlight shift from the banner overhead straight onto them. I continued, warmth gathering in my chest. I spent 10 years writing that book, scraping by on freelance gigs, pouring my savings into self-publishing because I believed stories matter. I believed voices, like the ones reading in that line, deserve to be heard. Real jobs. My job is to imagine worlds, to give people hope, to hold a mirror to our struggles. That's as real as it gets. Gavin's mouth twitched, but no words came. One of his friends, a woman named Claire, stepped back, her phone lowered. The rest looked suddenly small. I turned back to the crowd. If you'd like your copy personalized, I'm happy to sign it. If not, that's okay too. Thank you all for coming tonight, especially to those who believed a novice writer could create something worth reading. I swept them all a small bow. Then I returned to my seat behind the table. Emma exhaled. The line surged forward with renewed energy. People pushed photos and novels toward me, their voices eager. Behind me, the bookstore manager let out a relieved chuckle. I signed book after book, each name a reminder that my work had found its place. And somewhere in the back of the hall, I glimpsed Gavin and his crew, faces flushed, shifting under the weight of a different kind of silence. A silence born not of superiority, but of respect withheld, of assumptions unraveled. When the last copy slid across the table, I closed my pen. The banner's letters glowed softly. Cameron Reyes. I let the words settle around me. This was real. This was my job, my calling. I stood, heart thrumming with pride. Meeting every gaze, I said, "Thank you, all of you, for making tonight unforgettable." The crowd erupted into applause. My cheeks burned with joy as applause echoed off the shelves lined with thousands of stories. Tonight, I had written my own, a story of resilience, of turning derision into defiance, of claiming my place, even in the face of those who said I didn't belong. As Emma guided me to the back exit, I took one last look at the banner. It wasn't just a sign, it was proof. Proof that I had chosen and built a real job, one bound not by income or title, but by purpose and passion. And the applause still rang in my ears as I stepped into the cool night air, ready for whatever chapters lay ahead. The night air felt electric as Emma and I spilled out of the bookstore's back exit, the sounds of the city's after-midnight rush folding around us like applause still echoing in my ears. Earlier, I'd felt triumphant, vindicated by the applause, buoyed by the knowledge that I'd stood my ground. But now, as we paused under the glow of the lamppost, I realized the real journey was only beginning. Aftermath and awakening. Cameron, did you see? Emma's voice was breathless with excitement. Your social feed exploded. #real job is trending, but not the way they meant it. People are sharing their real jobs. Artists, activists, dreamers. It's become a movement. I peered at my phone. Notifications blinked so fast I couldn't keep up. Retweets, shares, stories tagged with images of painters, dancers, teachers, programmers. everyone declaring proudly that their real job was the one they were passionate about. A small smile tugged at my lips. They turned our moment into something bigger. Emma nodded. This can't just fizzle out. We need to harness this momentum. A flicker of strategy sparked in my mind. Tomorrow, we host a live Kenda on Instagram, #RealJobLive. Invite anyone to ask me anything. Writing tips, career pivots, why following your passion is worth the risk. Emma whipped out her phone to start drafting the announcement. I breathed in the cool air, tasting possibility. The morning after sunlight streamed through my apartment windows at 7 the next morning, landing on a pile of unopened press packets and congratulatory cards. My body protested as I rolled out of bed, but the electric charge in my veins wouldn't let me linger. Over strong coffee, I reviewed the overnight analytics, 10,000 new followers, dozens of media inquiries, and a request from a popular podcast, Dreamers Club, to record an episode that afternoon. I tapped out a quick reply. Yes, let's do it. I have 2 hours free before #RealJobLive. As I hit send, my phone pinged again, an email from Mercer and Finch Publishing. We'd like to feature your story in our fall quarterly. Please send a headshot and bio by Tuesday. My heart fluttered, ironic, given that the same colleagues had mocked my real job last night. A moment's hesitation, then I drafted a gracious acceptance. Even on a high, I reminded myself, kindness keeps bridges open. Conflict. The publisher's call, at 10 a.m., my phone rang. The label read Harper Edge editorial. My pulse quickened. This was the imprint I'd dreamed of since I first cracked open a classic novel. Cameron Reyes, said a cultured voice. I'm Lydia Chen, senior editor. Congratulations on your launch and the social media wave you've created. We'd like to discuss an offer, a 2-book deal for your next projects, plus a marketing advance. I sank onto my writing chair. A 2-book deal, security, validation, the promise of a stable income. Yet years of self-publishing had taught me one thing: creative control is as precious as any paycheck. I'm honored, I said carefully. Could you send over contract details? I'd like to review terms, especially regarding creative rights. She laughed, a warm, knowing sound. Absolutely. We want to nurture your voice, not dilute it. We'll send a draft today. After we hung up, I exhaled. The door to a real job in publishing had swung wide open. I glanced at my manuscript, strewn across my desk, notes for book 2, ideas that sprung from last night's confrontation, characters grappling with identity. Could I balance a traditional contract with my indie spirit? The #RealJobLive Conda. At noon, I logged onto Instagram Live. The banner glowed at the top of the screen. #RealJobLive with Cameron Reyes. Within seconds, comments began streaming. At creative_coder. Advice for making a living. Doing what you love. At Teacher Soul. I've been told to get a real job for years. How did you ignore the noise? At Ink and Paper. What inspired your main character, Mara? I smiled and leaned closer to the camera. Let's talk about that. For me, the noise was a signpost. It showed me where the world's narrow expectations lay. Instead of deterring me, I used it as a roadmap of what not to become. Questions tumbled out, and I answered each as honestly as I could, about late-night revisions, dealing with rejection, building community around my work, and making peace with financial uncertainty. Halfway through, I saw a comment from Yesid Gavin Publish Intern, one of the faces from Mercer and Finch. He wrote, "Congrats. Didn't think you had it in you." I paused, then smiled wryly. "Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment." The chat erupted in applause emojis and supportive messages. I pressed on, sharing tips on finding freelance gigs, pitching articles, and diversifying income streams, because a real job could mean multiple creative roles, not just one desk under fluorescent lights. A midnight revelation. That evening, sleep eluded me. My mind raced with possibilities and pitfalls. The Harper Edge offer, the Mercer and Finch feature, the momentum of #RealJob. What if the industry interest diluted my indie credibility? What if I traded one cage for another? I opened my laptop and browsed the Conda highlights, hundreds of saved comments, DMs from aspiring writers. Then I opened my manuscript folder. Book 2's working title glittering in the header, Redemption's Echo. In that moment, clarity washed over me. The real job I'd been searching for all along was right here, crafting stories that resonated, building a community of dreamers, and forging my own path, even if it meant balancing contracts with authenticity. New chapter. Mara's story. The next morning, I carved out time to write. I revisited Mara, the protagonist of Echoes in the Corridor, a young archivist who unearths a secret society in her city's underground archives and must decide between comfort and risk. My pen moved with fresh purpose. I wrote dialogue that mirrored last night's Real Job Live revelations. Mara paused in the dimly lit vault. "What if they say I'm chasing shadows instead of a proper career?" she whispered. Her mentor, Tabitha, placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then you'll show them why shadows reveal truths the light hides." As the words flowed, I felt a convergence of my two worlds, the real-life resilience I'd shown at the bookstore, and the fictional courage Mara embodied. A surprise. That afternoon, there was a knock at my door. It was Gavin, flanked by two other former colleagues. His usual smirk was gone, replaced with tentative respect. "Cameron," he said, voice low. "I watched your conda. I realized I misjudged you. Writing isn't a hobby. It's a craft, an honest profession." My heart fluttered at his words, not because I craved his approval, but because transformation commands more power than mockery. He held out a folder. "I tracked down an editor friend at a literary magazine. He wants to run your short story from the anthology issue. Consider it a belated apology, and a chance to show the world what you can do." I felt tears prick my eyes. An olive branch, offered with humility. I nodded, voice catching. "Thank you. That would mean a lot." He exhaled, relieved. "And if you ever need an assistant or a beta reader, I'm around." We shared a brief, genuine smile, the kind that closed old wounds without rewriting the past. Building bridges and boundaries over the next week, my world expanded. Harper Edge contract arrived, carefully worded to preserve my creative control. I finalized my feature bio for Mercer and Finch's Quarterly, framing my journey as an inspiration. The anthology short story offer from Gavin's contact came through, with a modest honorarium. New podcast invitations landed, indie and corporate alike. My manuscript for Book 2 grew by 2 chapters, richer for the real-world dialogue I'd lived. Yet, amid the whirlwind, I set boundaries: 2 dedicated hours of writing each morning, no email Sundays, and a commitment to donate a portion of every royalty check to literacy programs. I realized that a real job wasn't one you slid into. It was one you built with intention, powered by passion, and protected by self-respect. The Fleisches. Heaskell's launch party. 6 months later, the sequel, Redemption's Echo, debuted. We held the launch at the same bookstore. Only this time, the banner read, "An Evening with Cameron Rez, Book 2. Gavin and his colleague Claire arrived early, bearing flowers and genuine smiles. The Mercer and Finch team was present, not in mockery but celebration. Lydia Chen from Harper Edge toasted me with champagne. The audience stretched down the aisles, a tapestry of readers, writers, journalists, dreamers, my chosen family. I took the stage and, before diving into a reading, paused. The silence was sweet. Then I said, "A year ago, I was told to get a real job. Tonight, I'm here with 2 published novels, contracts that respect my voice, and a community that proves a real job is whatever you dare to make it. Thank you all for making the impossible real." The roar of applause was the sweetest currency I'd ever earned. Back in my apartment late that night, I reflected on the journey, the bookstore confrontation, the viral hashtag, the publishing offers, the reconciliation with old colleagues, and the sequel's triumphant launch. I opened my desk drawer and found a scrap of paper. "Find a real job," scrawled in Gavin's handwriting from that day. I folded it gently and placed it under my manuscript of Book 3. Because now I understood, a real job isn't defined by salary, title, or location. It's defined by purpose, by the courage to stand firm, by the willingness to build bridges without losing yourself. And as I typed the first lines of my 3rd novel, where Mara discovers that true reality is written in both shadow and light, I felt more grounded than ever. This was my real job, my real life, and I'd never look back.